Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's video, we are going to be creating a motorcycle tire in plasticity. So there are a handful of tools that we're going to be using. Specifically, we're going to create curves, we're going to use revolve. We are going to also create a revolved sheet or a surface. That's going to be the extent or the place where we're creating our actual cutouts for the tread. We are going to be using Unwrap and we're going to be using Deform. And so with all of these, as well as things like patterning, we're going to build out a pretty realistic looking tire. And so to get started, when you open Plasticity for the first time, or if you've been using it a while and you're kind of getting into it, the first thing I always do is delete the cube. If you always delete the cube, if you never use it, once you delete it, you can go up to your P menu and you can save a new startup scene. That'll save the new startup scene without the cube. So keep that in mind that if you want to always have it sort of deleted or removed, you can do that. I just leave it as default because that way anybody that's following along is going to have the same thing. Remember that if you are looking to purchase Plasticity, we are an affiliate. You can use the code LEAD10 at checkout. That'll save you 10% and it does help out the channel. I'll leave all that information in the description of the video so you can find it there as well. On the right-hand side, I am using the millimeter unit system. We're going to enter some dimensions in inches, and I make my grid size 250 with lines every 25. That's just how I like it. Most of the time when I use Plasticity, I end up 3D printing. So this is a good indicator of basically how big of a part can fit on my 3D printer. Next, we're going to hit the forward slash. That's going to zoom in. And I'm going to hit 5 on the numpad, which goes into a perspective view. So 5 goes back and forth between perspective and orthographic. You can also click on it up here in the upper right and click that if you don't want to remember the shortcut for it. I prefer to model with perspective on, especially when we're creating something like a tire. And every time we go to a normal view, like a front or a right, that's going to go back to orthographic for us. So we don't need to worry about that. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's get started actually creating some geometry. So we're going to use the numpad for the view, and so you can click on 3 on your numpad to go to a right view. Again, if you don't like shortcuts, you can click on the X or the side of the cube up here in the upper right, and that'll do the same thing. I strongly suggest you do at least get familiar with a handful of shortcuts if you want to be somewhat efficient in Plasticity. And that's going to be the numpads on the right-hand side, the numbers across the top for your selection filters, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Also tab, if you're not doing anything else, you're not creating a solid or curves, tab will select all of those. And then a handful of things like move, rotate, and scale. Just those alone will go a long way in making Plasticity run more efficiently for you. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click where everything is and only use the shortcuts if needed. So we're going to start with a line. We're going to start at the origin and begin to drag up. Then we want to hit the tab key, which will go over to our dimension. So most motorcycle rims, at least sport bikes, supermotos, a vast majority of bikes will have a 17-inch rim by default. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter 17. That's the diameter. So we're going to do divided by 2. And then we're going to hit space and type in inch and enter. What we've done is we've created the radius, because we did 17 divided by 2. We've created the radius of what our rim is going to be. I'm not going to go into super detail on like the cross section and profile of a tire. This is just going to be an example. If you want to spend the time to create a really detailed tire, you will have to understand what the profile is. Some tires will be flatter in the center and they'll have a very gradual rounded section on the side. Some, especially if you look at like GP tires or slicks, some may have a higher center and then a flatter section and then a rounded edge. It all depends on the tire manufacturer. So we're going to take a simple approach to this and use a true rounded profile, which is probably more like a front tire, in most cases like a Metzler. And so we're going to start at that endpoint, begin to drag this out, hit tab, and I'm going to make this 180 millimeter diameter and hit enter. So once again, this is going to be just a very simplified version of a tire, but it'll work for our example. The next thing we're going to do is create a line. Now what we're creating at this point is going to be the sidewall. So we're going to start to bring a line. We don't want it to be vertical. We want to come in a little bit. And then from here, we're going to create the bead. And I'm just going to use lines for this. I'm not going to worry about creating arcs or anything. If you need to go close to horizontal and you don't want to snap, hold down the control or I believe the command key on a Mac, and that'll temporarily override that. So I'm going to create a little line here and another one coming down, and then right click to accept. With that currently selected, I'm going to zoom out a bit so we can kind of see the origin. I'm going to go to my three-dot menu and use mirror, which is also Alt and X. I'm going to click on the X axis here. Now, again, with shortcut keys, and I'll show this with shortcut keys in just a second, so that will create the mirror on the right-hand side, and you can right-click to confirm. But what I want to show you is if you just do Alt, X, X, and Enter, you get the same thing. So again, remembering a handful of shortcut keys is going to go quite a long way. Next, what we want to do is trim away the part we don't need. This three-dot menu oftentimes is going to have most of the contextual tools. There are a handful of tools like trim, which are going to be curve-based tools that will live over here. So you can see trim is here by default. And you can always use the search commands or the F key to search for anything that you can't find. And so this is basically the F key is a good one to get used to, because even if you don't remember any other shortcuts, it can be really quick for you to hit the F key and start to type in trim and then get to the trim tool. So again, multiple ways to get there. I certainly suggest using shortcuts wherever possible if you can remember them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to trim away these sections here, right click. We want to select everything except for this vertical line, that line we don't actually need. So I'm going to select and delete that. And then I'm going to box select everything here, and I want to join them together. So from the three-dot menu, what we want to do is join, which is J on the keyboard. A lot of these tools will work for curves as well as sheets or surfaces. And so J to join, and then the Alt and J to unjoin will work on both sheets and surfaces. The next thing that we want to do is we actually want to round the corners, and you'll notice that fillet is grayed out here. Now, even though it's grayed out, what we really want to do is round these points. So some of these tools will not be selectable based on what you have currently selected. So for example, this right now, as soon as everything is deselected, all of these purple dots are corners that are connected that can be rounded off. And if we look here, you can see fillet is still grayed out. If we select the entire curve and come down here, fillet's still grayed out. But you can use the shortcut key B, even though that's grayed out. And so again, it's really important that we do learn some of these. Now, as we begin to pull this down, I'll zoom in a little bit. As we're pulling it down, you can see it's rounded. As we go up, it's actually creating a chamfer. Actually, let me zoom in. No, sorry. Up is creating the fillet, and down is creating the chamfer. With these small ones, it's kind of hard to see sometimes. So we want to make sure that this number is positive. It doesn't have to be very big. 3 millimeters will be fine. Right click. Now we're going to offset this because we want to create a solid profile. Again, if you are just trying to create a very simplified version of a tire, we could go straight across from here and close this profile off, and then we could create a revolved solid and shell. But we also want to explore these tools. So what we're going to do is we're going to offset. And again, you can come down to this three-dot menu and you can go to offset curve. Again, this tool works both on these curves. It also works if you select a face, and just bring it in 6 millimeters or so. Now let's zoom in, grab our line tool, and we'll go from endpoint to endpoint. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Again, just to mention shortcuts, to repeat the last command, Shift and R will repeat whatever the last command is that you have. Shift and A is the shortcut for line. I find that those are kind of difficult. The Shift and A in Shift and R are kind of difficult, but they do go quite a long way. If you need to repeat the last command, that can be pretty helpful, or if you need a line, that can be pretty helpful. So select everything, go to your three-dot menu, and select Join. Now, again, keep in mind with shortcuts, I know I keep harping on this. With shortcuts, this would be so much quicker. But as you're sort of learning and figuring things out, you won't know where everything is. So you do need to spend some time kind of learning the tools. Now that we have this, one very important thing, I see a lot of people make this mistake. Right now, what we have selected is the curves, and what we want is the profile. So you want to make sure that you deselect everything and select just the profile. The reason for that is if we select the curve, and I'll just use extrude as an example, don't follow this, but as we extrude this with the curve selected, what we're getting is a surface or a sheet. So the same thing is true for a revolve, and you may revolve something and it may look like a solid, but it's actually not. And so you want to make sure that whenever you're trying to create a solid, that you select a profile and not the curves. So once we have the profile selected, three-dot menu again, and what we're going to do is revolve. We want to pick 2 points on the axis of revolution. So what we're going to do is we're going to revolve about Y. So I'll click on Y once, and then I'll click on Y again, and right-click to confirm. I'm going to hide the profile. I don't really need it right now. And I also like to turn off X-ray mode because I find it's a little distracting to see through a model like this. But again, that's our basic tire. Again, rounded profile. We made the sidewall here, but this gives us everything we need. The next step of this process is to identify and understand that most of the time when we have treads cut away, or we've got these basically these grooves that allow the rubber to deform, sometimes they're for water or dirt extraction, but whenever we have these, they typically will exit the tire basically exactly where the outside surface is, and they'll be deeper in the center. And so there's generally, they're exiting before this edge right here where it rolls down to the sidewall. And so what we need to do is we need to create a surface that is going to be the extent of these solid tools. And so to do that, I'm going to hide the revolve. I'm going to bring back our curve. And then I'm going to go back to that side view. So X or 3 on the keyboard. And now I want to create a profile. It's just going to be a surface, but a profile that will allow me to create essentially where the rubber is going to cut to, or where it's going to be cut away from. So from this, the center circle, there's a little white arrow on the bottom right corner. You hold down the left mouse button, and we want to go to a 3-point. Actually, you know what? Let's do something else first. Let's grab the line tool, and we're going to pick a point that's about halfway down into the rubber and just draw a line out to the right. And then from our 3-point arc tool, we're going to go down and we're going to select tangent arc. We're going to select the end point of that line. And then we're going to bring this arc down, and we want it to exit before, we don't want it to go all the way to this point. We want it to exit the tire before, let's say right there. And then we're going to delete this line, and then we're going to mirror this one across. Again, Alt and X, if you can remember that. And then you can hit the X key, right click, and we want to join these together. So once again, J on the keyboard, or you can join them together. Let's hide the first profile, rotate this around, maybe bring it to the center so we can see it, and we're going to go to revolve. So revolve this time is going to produce a surface for us. So again, click on the y-axis, then hide our curve. So this surface is going to be exiting wider than the tire, wider than the solid, but it's going to be inside, and which means when we create our solid geometry, what's going to end up happening is our tools that we're creating will go into the solid body deeper in the center, and they'll fade away on the side. And that's why we're doing this, is we're basically creating that cut surface. One other thing we want to do before we use this as our unwrap tool is with it selected, we want to go to the find command, and we want to start to type in delete, and we want to select delete redundant topology. So when we use that, it's going to get rid of all of those extra divisions, so we're left with a nice clean surface. So it got rid of where the start and end of that revolve was, as well as that midline, which was created because we had 2 arcs. So now everything is nice and smooth. We want to flatten this out, so we've got a reference for creating our tools. So select it, click again because we want to select the face, that surface, go to your find tool, and start to type in unwrap. So unwrap face is going to essentially take that entire thing and it's going to flatten it out. Now, there are some things that we should be aware about this. Depending on what we end up drawing on this surface, we need to be careful with how they deform. So it's going to take some playing around, but the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to draw the tread pattern, and I'm going to pattern it all the way across, and then we're going to deform that around our surface. And so temporarily, let's hide the tire. Let's view this from the top. And let's start to create our tread surface. I'm going to do this fairly simply. I'm going to go to my arcs and I'm going to select a 3-point arc. I'm going to grab the edge here and I'm going to create an arc that goes across the midline. And then I'm going to do another one. So again, we can repeat that. They don't need to be concentric for what we're doing. Just as long as it's close enough. We're going to grab a line, right click to accept. We'll use the line again. And then I want to join all these together. Not required, but again, it kind of helps, at least me, manage what's going on in the outliner on the left-hand side. It keeps it a little bit cleaner. We can rename this as well if we want to. All right, so that's our first tread cut out, and I'm going to create a second one. It's going to go a bit further. So maybe cut over here. And we'll repeat that. Again, Shift and R will allow you to repeat if you want to use the shortcuts. And then our line tool, right click, line tool, right click. And then we want to select all of these and join them together. All right, so those are two tread, I guess, blocks or patterns. I want to take these and I want to move them. So I'm going to use G or click the move command, and I'm going to pull this just a little bit to the right. And what I want to do is I'm going to use, let's do this again. And I'm going to create an arc here, just a smaller one. I'm going to create another arc from here to here maybe. And we'll do one more from there. Let's come to that corner. And then a line to finish it off. And once again, select all of these. Actually, you know what? Let's delete this. Select and delete that. Let's join these three together. And then we're going to offset them. Okay. So then I'm going to create a line from there to there. And I'll create a line that's tangent out to there. And then we'll use our trim tool to get rid of that, get rid of that. And then let's join all these together. So this is just going to give us a different shape to look at. Nothing really too special about it. But now that we've got this, let's again select profiles. So I'm going to rotate this around. And I want this profile, hold down Shift. Make sure that you're not selecting curves. It can be easier also if you select the face option. It will only let you select the profiles. And then you can begin to pull these up. Now, one thing to keep in mind as we do this, they need to go up quite a bit because they need to exit the thick part of the rubber at the center. But we also need them to go down into the bottom, which is going to be this other direction here. And so you need to start to put a negative value depending on how deep you want it to cut. And so I'm just going to put about 2.5 millimeters there. Right click and accept that. I'm going to hide all the curves. With all of these selected, let's go ahead and move this so we can see the origin. We're going to select mirror, and this time we're going to go about the Y, but we don't want to join them together. So we want to turn off cut down the mirror plane, right click, and with those two or those three selected, we're going to use move and just pull them off to the right. And that's going to be our tread pattern. All right, so now we need to pattern this. So hold down Shift. We're going to change this to actually select sheet or solid. Hold down Shift to select everything. We're going to go to a rectangular array. Snap to the end over here. Right click. And now what we have is we have everything we need to wrap this around our reference surface. So in the sheet section, we want to show that revolved sheet with all of our solid objects still selected. We want to go to Find, and we want to type in Deform. So the way that this Deform works is first we need to select a reference neutral plane, which is going to be our unwrapped face. And then the target face to deform is going to be our revolved surface. It's going to have to calculate a little bit. You may need to let it think. If it's going too far on the inside, what you want to do is flip normal, And so that's going to put the thicker side on the outside, and you can see the thinner side that we're cutting away from the tire is right there. And then everything looks good. We can right click and accept that. So we don't need the revolved surface and we don't need that sheet anymore. What we want to do is bring back our revolved solid. We're going to select it and we're going to use the Boolean. Now, I've said that wrong in the past videos. I always call it Boolean. Boolean, hopefully that's right. If not, let me know in the comments. And so we've got our solid selected. We're going to use this tool right here, which is Q. And then we want to select all the bodies to remove. Removing or cutting by default is what's selected. Difference is what it's called here. So select the first one, hold down the Shift key and select the last one, then right click to accept. And so this should give us the tire treads cut out. Now, if we happen to have had too many in the pattern, like you can see this one here, what we can do is Control Z twice to undo. And then I can just simply get rid of the overlapping one. So this one right here, I'm just going to delete it. And any others that overlap, we can get rid of. And so really what that is when I pattern this, I should have gotten rid of the last one at the end of that pattern. Again, you need to kind of pay attention to the amount that you're patterning, the number of instances, and so on. Again, for our example, I'm just going to go through this. Right click, and there we go. All right, there's a couple other things I want to talk about here. We're going to talk about materials, but I also want to talk about text on the side face here. So we need to be able to select face. I'm going to grab this one right here. We are going to go to our search, and we're going to start to type in unwrap face. And again, this gives us our reference. So let's hide the solid, take a look at this reference from the top, and what we're going to do is, let's just zoom in a little bit, go to our search command and start to type in text. So with text, let's go ahead and just type in learn everything about design. You can type in whatever you want, of course. I'm going to increase the size of this so it fills it in a little bit more. And then with it selected, let's just move this over. With it selected, I'm going to use the move tool and just pull it down so it is all going to be on the shape. All right, so now let's extrude this. If you want to, let's hide the surface for now. If you want to, what you can do is box select, but you will need to basically hold down Control and deselect everything that's inside of the letters. Control will allow you to remove from the selection. Shift will add to it. So Shift won't work in this case. And then we can just pull the letters out. I'm not going to go very far. Let's say 2 millimeters. Enter. And then we want to hide all the curves. So I'm going to select all of them. And H on the keyboard can hide, or you can click the little eyeball icon. All right, so we've got all the letters. We need to bring our surface back. And we should probably create a pattern of all of these letters. So let's go ahead and select them all. And we'll do a rectangular array. So I'm going to just select the end over here. You can hold down Shift and use the mouse wheel to add or remove, or you can use the numbers over here. So let's say that we want 3. And actually, let's go ahead and let's do 2. All right, I'm not sure how this is going to wrap, but let's give it a shot. So bring the tire back. With all of those solids selected, we're going to go to F or click the little magnifying glass, deform. The reference face is that flattened surface. Where we want to stick the text is on the side of the tire. We're going to let it calculate. Again, you may need to flip normal depending on the orientation of the stuff you created. And you can see here that the text is backwards. So what we need to do is mirror it. So click the first one. That should flip the text around. Still calculating. There's a little green circle that's kind of spinning above deform. And there you go. Looks like I probably could have lowered the text a little bit. It's getting pretty close to the cut. That's okay. And there you can see that it's down there as well. All right, so it looks pretty good. So I'm going to right click to accept. If we want to, we can try to mirror this across to the other side. I'm not going to worry about it right now. Instead, I want to use the Boolean, and what we're going to be doing is joining everything together, which is union, and we want to join it to the tire. Right click to accept. All right. I don't know that that worked, so let's go ahead and it doesn't look like everything is connected together. Let's select solid. Let's hide the sheet. And what is this? So these letters are not connected. Okay, so let's select this. Let's try again. And then tool body is also a target. Which tool body is it? Extrude 28 is the main body. Okay. So what we want is these. And I'm going to hit union, join that together. All right, it doesn't seem to want to join them together. Or did it? Let's see. Okay, it did join some of them. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do that one more time. For some reason, some of the text was like kind of in the middle. So let's go ahead and just do this again. It's calculating, thinking. Maybe a problem because it's going over some of these little corners right here. Okay, it all went together. So I think just initially when I tried to do that, my selection was wrong. I just kind of missed the main body of the tire. But now we've got all the text on there. So the last thing that we want to do is we want to put the rubber material on here. So I'm going to go to Assets. I'm going to scroll down until we find rubber right there and just drag it onto that. Now you might not notice anything at first because we're not in rendered mode yet. And so you want to go into render mode and then you'll be able to see the tire. So kind of rotate this around. Let's go this way and get some light on it. And actually, let's go ahead and let's rotate this. I'm going to rotate this about X. I'm going to enter 90 degrees. Now we should have some. Where is the text at? Oh, of course, it's on the other side, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, I rotated it the wrong way. Let me go ahead and rotate this again. 180 degrees. All right, now the text is on top, so we should be able to see it a bit better. All right, so there we go. We created our tire. We now have all the treads cut. You can turn off render mode if it's easier to see. And you can see that the cuts are fading away. Now, if I had done things like rounded the corners on the tool before they cut away, all these would be rounded. But you can spend as much time as you need to creating the details for these cutouts. Again, it just depends on what you need in terms of detail for a model. But that's the way that we can go about this process using just really a handful of tools. Obviously, some basic curve creation tools. But we also needed to go through the process of creating a revolve for both a solid and a surface or a sheet. Then we needed to unwrap that sheet. Then we needed to create the cutouts that we wanted, pattern them, then deform those solids so that they wrapped to the sheet, and then cut them away from the tire. This technique can be used for all sorts of different things, not just tires, but hopefully this video helped you. Remember that we are an affiliate for Plasticity, so if you want to save some money and help out the channel, you can use the code LEAD10 at checkout. That'll save you 10%, and it does help us out. If you have any questions or comments on anything you'd like to see in Plasticity, please let me know. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.